Let's look at a couple of examples of home mortgages. Now, a home mortgage is just a loan for buying a home. Now, often with a home loan, a down payment is required. Typically, it might be 10% or 20% of the cost of the home. Usually, a lending organization will not give you a mortgage or a loan for the entire cost of the home. They want some of it to have been paid for by you already. So they are only going to give you a mortgage for part of the value of the home. So that's why a down payment is required. Now, there are often two ways that interest rates can be looked at with home mortgages. Or set up, I should say. You can have a fixed rate home mortgage. That's when the interest rate stays the same over the entire length of the loan. So the interest rate stays the same. Whereas you could also have a variable rate or an ARM loan. The rate may, in this case, change over the length of the loan. It could change and get lower, or it could change and get higher. So that interest rate may change, and usually it changes based on what the going rates are for the country. Closing costs are fees that you pay in order for the loan to be processed when you're first asking for the loan. This is something we're going to not worry about. We're not going to use in our examples just because it'll introduce something a little more complicated. Plus, closing costs can vary depending on the lending organization and the situations you have going on. So we're not going to worry about them in this in our lecture. But I wanted to just put them in that is something that can happen. Likewise, we're mainly going to concentrate on fixed rates because fixed rates are a little bit easier. We're going to stay with one particular rate throughout the course of the loan, except for in one example. So fixed rates, but we are going to look at down payments. So let's start with an example. Say you find a house that you love and it costs $425,000. You decide you're going to pay 12% down and finance the rest with a loan at 4.8% fixed APR for 30 years. So this would be a 30-year loan. So let's work out first how much your loan will be for. It's not going to be for the entire cost of the home. Remember, we said we're going to pay 12% as a down payment. So let's work out what that down payment is, and then that'll allow us to figure out how much is left that we use the loan for. So to find 12% of the cost of the home, we would take 0.12 times 425,000. That would give us an amount for our loan, or our down payment rather, of $51,000. So you're putting $51,000 down as a down payment. What that means, therefore, is if the cost of the home is $425,000, your loan is going to be $425,000 minus $51,000. So you're going to be borrowing $374,000. So your loan amount is going to be $374,000. So that's the amount of the loan. Let's work out what our monthly payment would be if that's how much we were getting the loan for. We're going to use that spreadsheet formula for payment. Start with an equals, then say PMT. It is really important you put the equals at the very beginning. If you don't put it at the very beginning, spreadsheets are not going to calculate this for you. PMT and then parentheses. We're going to start with our interest rate. Now this has to be the interest rate for every payment. That's a monthly payment, so it's going to be 0.048 divided by 12. So I have to take the interest rate as a decimal divided by 12 to make it a monthly rate. Now we're paying this off over 30 years. That's 12 times a year for 30 years, so that is 12 times 30. I'm using an asterisk for the times. Then we put in the present value, which is the loan amount, $374,000. Do not put a comma into that loan amount. And then comma, and then we want to pay down to 0. So if you put this into Google Sheets or into Excel or any spreadsheet, it should return you the monthly payment. And in fact, when I did it, I got $1,962.25 per month. That would be our monthly payment. to pay this house loan, I should say, off over 30 years. Let's work out how much interest we've paid over the 30 years for that loan. Well, each payment is $1,962.25, and we're paying that every month, so times 12 for 30 years. So we can work out that we've paid in total $706,410 paid in all. So over the course of those 30 years, we end up paying $706,410 altogether. Now, that's not all interest. The interest would be what the amount of this that wasn't the loan to begin with. So the interest would be to subtract the total amount, $706,410, and the amount of the loan, $374. So the interest that we paid in the course of the 30 years was $332,410 altogether. So that would be the total amount of interest we've paid, which is a lot. Notice that interest amount is almost the same thing, not quite, but it's almost the amount of the loan. So that's a lot of interest you pay over 30 years. Part of that is because, remember, the idea is that as we go out more and more time, the interest really comes into its own. We pay a lot of interest over that amount of time. Let's look at that same example again. The house costs $425,000. You're going to pay 12% down and finance the rest with a loan of 4.8% fixed APY for 30 years. But what if we changed it instead of 30 years? What if we changed it to a 15-year loan? So let's say we wanted to pay it off quicker. Let's work out what the monthly payment would be and how much interest we would pay over the 15-year period of the loan. So remember, the house costs $425,000 rather, but we paid 12% down, so the loan was actually for $374,000. So when I go to work out the payment with a 15-year loan, we're going to say equals PMT for payment. The interest rate is still the same, 0.048 divided by 12, because I need a monthly interest rate. Then we're going to put in how many total payments would be. 12 times, instead of 30, it's now going to be 15 because it's a 15-year loan now. We still have the same loan amount, $374,000, but do not put a comma in that loan amount. And then we want to pay it off to 0 at the end. If we do this and hit enter with a spreadsheet, it will tell us exactly what our monthly payment needs to be. And our monthly payment, it turns out, when we want to pay off in 15 versus 30 years, ends up being $2,918.75 per month. Okay, so this ends up being our monthly payment. To work out how much interest we've paid, we first need to find the total amount that we paid. That would be $2,918.75 paid every month for over the course of the year. So that's 12 months during the year for 15 years. Means that we end up paying $25,375 altogether. So if that's the total amount paid, then the interest that we've paid over the course of these 15 years is equal to that total minus the amount of the loan, which was $374,000. So the interest we paid over 15 years for this 15-year loan was $151,375. Now let's compare these two loans. We had a 30-year loan versus a 15-year loan. Same amount though. Both were having a loan for $374,000. The monthly payment in the 30-year loan was $1,962.25. The monthly payment with the 15-year loan was $2,918.75. First off, one thing you can see right away is that, of course, the monthly payment is higher with a 15-year loan because you're paying the loan off sooner. But it's not twice as high. Their 30-year loan had a loan payment, monthly payment that was just shy of $2,000. The 15-year loan has a loan payment that's just shy of $3,000. It is an increase, but it's not double the amount. Why isn't it double the amount? Well, it has to do with how much interest you pay. If you're paying off over 30 years, in the course of that 30-year loan, we worked out that you're paying $332,410 in interest, whereas with the 15-year loan, we're paying $151,375 in interest. Notice, because we're not paying as much interest, our monthly payment doesn't need to be double the amount of the 30-year loan. So in comparing these two loan amounts, obviously, if you look at the entire span of the loan, it's beneficial to pay less interest. That's the 15-year loan, therefore, is better if you want to pay less interest. However, the advantage of the 30-year loan is the lower monthly payment. And if you can only afford about $2,000 each month in terms of your home loan, your cost of your housing, then the 30-year loan is a better loan for you, because if you can't pay close to $3,000, which is what the 15-year loan makes you pay, then it doesn't do you any good to pay less interest if you can't pay off a monthly mortgage. So you kind of have to look at your situation. Can you afford the higher monthly payment so that you end up paying less interest? That's great. But if you can't, then it's probably better to have the longer loan, and just recognize that you do pay a little bit in terms of more interest. Now it's a lot more interest, but you are paying for that, and the lending organization is allowing for that. So the more time your loan goes out for, the more interest you're going to be paying to the bank.